Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to episode 85 of Faith Practically. I am Darian Claxton, and my guest today is speaker, business coach, serial entrepreneur, Frederick Douglass Bussey. How's it going today, Fred? You're muted.
I'm
There you
doing
go.
well, man. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here again.
Definitely, yeah. We had you on, was it 2020? A couple years ago, when we,
Yeah.
near the beginning of us doing this as a live video podcast. So glad to have you back on. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
So, Fred, so glad to have you back on, man. And we have a powerful topic today. And I want you, first of all, can you introduce yourself for those who are not familiar with you, what you do, your ministry, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Frederick Douglass Bussey. I am a husband and father of three little ones, or getting less little every day. I work with entrepreneurs and leaders to help them to uncover their untapped potential, to realize the things that they want to create in their business and in their life, whether it's impact, freedom, more wealth, whatever the case may be able to create those things and to make them into reality without all the stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and many of the fires that we set or the landmines that we can find that will blow us up in the process.
Yeah, yeah. One of your gifts, just as a quick plug for you, is identifying giftedness. I remember when we first connected a couple years ago, we had a talk about my ministry, and you were encouraging me to niche down, right?
Mhm.
And so when we think about the time that we expend, even in a ministry standpoint, we can be all over the map. And so, like, I was into, Bible study and Sabbath school and working with young people and working with men and women's ministries. And you basically encouraged me, gave me this light came on for me about niching in one specific topic. Doesn't mean that we can't deal with other topics, but you definitely have that light, and it's helped a lot of individuals. You pour into brothers on a regular basis, into couples, into a lot of people who are looking for clarity, who are leaders, who are trying to excel in their places of influence. So I'm just definitely thanking you for the power, for the gifts that God has given you, and you being willing to share those with others. And just wanted to ask you about this concept of failure. How would you define failure in the context of the price that we're paying for failing?
Mm. So I was thinking about the definition of failure. For me, I think about it in terms of defining the opposite first, right? And when we talk
Mhm.
about success, a lot of times it's easy for us to be able to describe someone who we see as being successful. And then different people have different definitions of what it is. So it's funny because we know it when we see it, but when we define it for ourselves, it can look very different from the next
Mm.
person, right? So if you want to be really simplistic about it, you could just say that failure is not being able to be successful at whatever it is, however you define success.
Mm.
So whatever that thing is that stands between you and what you're trying to do, that's the biggest challenge. My youngest is coming in here to help me define. Come on and sit here away from mommy. So whatever we are, if you are unable to accomplish the things that you're setting out in your life, right? Whatever that goal is, that destination, that finish line, if you will, that is a failure. That is failure to me.
Mm. 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 And I think a lot of times we beat ourselves up because of our definitions of success, and we see other people succeeding in those avenues, and we have the doctrine of comparisоnism, right? We look at them, we see their lives on social media, and we say we are not where they are, and so we consider our lives to be a failure. So first of all, I want to break down that concept of comparisоnism, right? Is there something to be gleaned by looking at the success of others in a positive way? Is there anything positive about seeing what other people are doing in their quest to overcome failure and find success?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think that in relation to comparisоnism, the reason why we suffer or struggle with that so much is because we look at where they are and we don't look at how they got there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So some of the most motivational or inspirational stories are when successful people tell us of their times of failure or struggle and how they overcame that, because those are the things that are standing between us and what we want to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking, there's a clip that I saw recently of Kobe
Mm-hmm.
Bryant, and he's talking, he's saying, don't look at what I did, look at how I did it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if we want to be able to achieve the things that other people do, it's great to be able to look at where they are, but also start to trace the trajectory of their progression, right? Everybody starts from zero, and we
Mm-hmm.
forget that. And I have a coach, Rich Litvin, a mentor of mine, who talks about the fact that um, lost my train of thought. There's a second. He talks about the fact that when you are trying to be successful, right, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success,
Hmm.
right? We often we often think of overnight sensations because we just discovered them and look at where they are and, oh man, it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, right? And we forget the years of sweat and toil and pain and struggle. And the thing that I guess we'll kind of dive in today a little bit more is the fact that it's not that it has to take that long. There is beauty in the fact that it takes as long as it takes, but oftentimes it takes longer than it should because we fail to do the things because we're looking at the wrong thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding where to set your target is just as important as having a target and knowing how to hit it.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring the concept of faith into this, because I believe that there's sometimes built-in excuses for failure for believers. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, because my eyes are on the prize of heaven, then I should not be pursuing a level of success that's comparable to how the world would define success.
Right.
How would you challenge or even go along with that sentiment that we shouldn't be pursuing these lofty goals? We should be focused all in on salvation as believers.
Well, there's a reason why when we get saved, we just don't go straight to heaven, right?
Mm,
I mean, if that was the point, then and there was no point to life itself here on earth, then what would be the point?
mm,
But we don't because there is a work for us here to do. And oftentimes, especially in Christianity or in religion, that work is equated to just being saved or just living a godly life or living according to the rules that God has set for us. But above and beyond that, there is a life or a purpose that He has instilled inside of us, right?
mm,
So, we talk about giftedness in my book, Breaking Orbit. I talk about the fact that we all have a gift, and that gift has a purpose. We spend a lot of our lives chasing purpose or trying to create a purpose when in fact the purpose is already inside of us. And so if you want another definition of success, success is living out your purpose on this earth, right? It would be as if you bought, say, a flashlight, for a very specific purpose, right? Which is to shine light in the darkness. And yet when the lights go out and the power goes out in the middle of a storm, you go to forget that flashlight, even though you have batteries in it, it doesn't work,
mm,
right? It's failed to fulfill its purpose. And so we all in our own ways are like flashlights, shining light in darkness at particular times for different people.
mm,
But many of us, we believe, hey, I got batteries in me, I got the juice, so now just take me on to heaven or whatever. And it's like, no, but you have a purpose here on earth to fulfill until it's time. Everything has, it said in the Bible, it has an appointed season, an appointed time, an appointed purpose. So we have to fulfill that in the meantime. Part of that is because it's developing our character to be ready for heaven, right? So we
mm,
think if I just accept, yeah, it's true, I could just accept God and He could take me and I'm saved in that moment, right? But our faith is the act of living out that purpose. Our faith allows us to develop our relationship with God so we have a deeper understanding of who He is. We become more and more like Him, and then we reflect Him. And so our purpose is actually magnified. So it's not just living our purpose on one level plane, it's the trajectory of growth in that purpose. So as we go deeper into Him, we actually elevate in terms of the impact and the power that we're able to have, right? It's the
mm,
same as if you're a flashlight that only works for your family, or you're a flashlight in the wilderness leading a group of people. out of a war-torn country, right?
Hmm.
Your flashlight, your purpose can be elevated the more significantly you understand the power of your purpose, the power of the one who instilled it in you, if that makes sense.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And I want to flip it to talk about those who are not living in their purpose. They're praying, they're asking for direction, they're doing their 9 to 5, punching a clock, living life kind of an autopilot. And God has this big plan over here for them that they have just not been able to tap into. Is there a price? So I know the episode is called The High Price of Failure. Is it okay to say, hey, I accomplished my purpose 70 years down the line, right? Is that okay? I accomplished my purpose. I was able to help some people, fulfill their purpose. I was able to get some folks, pointing them to Christ, et cetera, et cetera. But I spent all this time trying to find it. Is there a price for that delay, as it were?
All right, let me answer the question this way. Have you ever been on vacation?
Yes.
Yes. What is the name an exotic or the most exotic or pleasurable place that you've ever been?
I wouldn't say exotic or pleasurable. It was a great vacation. It was actually in Freeport, Bahamas.
Okay, in the Bahamas, perfect.
Yeah.
When you got to the Bahamas, and I imagine that you sat on the beach or you laid on the beach, and the wind is blowing and the birds are chirping and it's peaceful or whatever. When you're laying there, the thought ever occurred to you, man, I should have done this sooner.
Yeah.
So the thing about it is that we often delay the gratification, right? We believe delayed gratification is the peace. But what I would suggest is that there actually is innate gratification in following through the process of fulfilling your purpose. So we think of success as we define it. Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama, whatever. We think of them being successful when they have gone there, right? When they have the TV show, or they've won the presidency, or they have bought Twitter, or whatever the case may be. They've hit that $1 billion number. But in actuality, their arrival, quote unquote, at that particular station in life was actually the culmination of them being successful the entire time, right? So they were always walking in their purpose. It was just a progression towards a certain place and beyond, right? Because once you leave the presidency, you are still being successful. You want to fulfill that purpose, but you cannot arrive at certain accomplishments or certain places in your life if you are not living into that on a consistent basis. So success actually reveals your consistency in being successful more than it validates who you are as a person, right? So I'm not looking at it as if I will be successful when. I am being successful now, and success reveals itself over time. So what is that? Why is that important? It's important because just like when you're on the beach and you're thinking about, man, I should have done this sooner. Even getting to the Bahamas was the culmination of many simple steps. I want to go to the Bahamas. I'm going to take a vacation. I'm going to be there for a certain amount of time. I'm going to buy the tickets. I'm going to pack. I'm going to buy the tickets for the plane. I'm going to fly, right? All those steps were the culmination of you planning and executing on your vacation, right? You put that into reality with an intention, and then you acted on that intention. And what very few of us do is we actually act on that intention. It's more of a wish or a fantasy or a hope. And so what we do is we live in the gap. We live in the regret. We live in the disappointment or the frustration of never actualizing that thing, of never actually working towards it, because we believe that we can only be happy or only be successful when we are there. And we think of all the reasons why we can't be, and so we don't act on it.
That's a scary thought, though, because a lot of people are indeed successful and they're aiming towards a height that people will acknowledge their success on a wide level, right? So in other words, there are those people who we don't know about yet because they haven't made that big move to the presidency, to buy some big corporation, to hit this income goal, to have a viral video, but they are successful. They're walking. If you would have asked them to say, yes, it's rough, it's difficult, I'm walking in my purpose. And then you have the person who is, I always pick on, you and I are both full-time entrepreneurs. So I feel bad for picking on 9-to-5ers, as it were, because but there's some 9-to-5ers that are clearly dissatisfied with their station. They know this is not what they were called for. It might have been what they went to school for, but they know every time they go there, they say, this is not for me. How does that person stop paying the price? Because every day, in my mind, every day that somebody is not living in their purpose is one less person that could be impacting, right? So even though you and I talked off camera about Colonel Sanders and him becoming this mogul in his 60s, right? What if he had done that earlier, right? How many lives could have been changed with the wealth, with whatever he did, right? And so what do you tell that person who clearly is not walking in their purpose and they're struggling? They're like, man, every day I'm losing a little bit more of myself. I'm coming home to my husband or to my wife with a dissatisfaction, discontentment that permeates the entire family. How do they stop paying that price and finally start walking in the success that they were called to, that God called them to?
Yeah. So even though we're not trying to pick on 9-to-5ers, if you look at it, statistics show, surveys and studies show that about 80% of people hate their jobs. They go to work every day and they hate it. And it doesn't mean that their job is necessarily bad. It doesn't mean they have to be working in a coal mine or anything like that. But in fact, they just feel misaligned. And so everything about their job rubs them the wrong way, right? And then we're talking about, what is the cost of going there every day doing to you, right? What is, it's like when you're driving your tires over rough terrain, it wears them out faster. Right? You don't get to tread longer. And after a while, it's, it does other things to your car, because if you continue to drive in those tires, your car gets out of alignment. Now your brakes wear out faster. Now maybe your engine and other things start to break down, because it's a culmination of all the different things that are happening. And so this happens to us as well, right? Our relationships suffer because we're angry at work and we're taking that energy home, right? It's causing conflict in our relationships, our marriages. It causes stress with our children, especially if you're not working as well, you're not performing as well, you're probably not making as enough money, you're not advancing, you're not, you're taking all those things home in terms of your mental health and your physical stress. You're not sleeping as well. You're waking up early to get there on time and stressed the whole time. So maybe you're getting car accidents or the stress of just being in traffic on the way to a job that you hate, in traffic, away from a job that you hate. And it's not giving you that fulfillment. That is a cost. It takes a toll. So I think a lot of times, because we're on repeat in our lives and in certain circles or routines, we start to believe that it's just the same old, same old. But in reality, there's a diminishing return to failing to live into our purpose, as much as there is an exponential return in doing that, in being successful at what we're meant to do. And I think part of that too is because a lot of us just, again, believe that life is supposed to be hard. We believe that we're supposed to be suffering and miserable. Our parents have told us, yeah, you're supposed to like work. Work is, and we get that idea from school. Right now we're working, like, the idea that you're supposed to sit here and study and work hard and learn, and in the end you're rewarded for having worked hard. Instead of the reward, it's being the learning itself. Instead of the reward being the work itself. Instead of the reward being the pouring out of who you actually are as a person, using your gift to bless, to inspire, to motivate, and to create new opportunities and possibilities for other people. That's the act of service. But when we are not living in that from the day to day, those are all the things that we're not doing, right? When we have to leave our job or leave our business or leave whatever it is that we're doing to go somewhere else, to be someone else, to do the things that we feel are really fulfilling to us. And those things are a part-time gig. Those things are a once in a lifetime or once in a week or whatever. That robs us of the joy that we can have living our lives for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
You're speaking about identity, and it's interesting how many of us, we change our identity throughout the day, particularly when we're not walking in our purpose. So we have a certain identity at work, or for an entrepreneur, we have a certain identity when we're dealing with our clients. And we have a different identity when we're dealing with our family. We have a different identity at church. And there is something to be said about, I guess what I ask you, is there a way to have the same identity in all facets? Right. And I'm not talking about code switching. I'm not talking about, like, you are going to relate to people differently based on who those individuals are. I'm talking about who you are and how good you feel about yourself as a person. Is it practical for you to be that same person, that same God-given joy and satisfaction that flows through you? Can that be every place, or are there always going to be places where it's going to be higher than others? Like your level of satisfaction, of joy, of peace is going to be higher than someplace else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What you're talking about to me sounds like integrity and identity.
Mm-hmm.
So the first aspect of that is to really break down what we think our identity is. And for many of us, we think our identity is our job or our work. Other people, it may be their relationship. Some people identify themselves as a mother or as a parent or as a husband. And so it is a role, but it is not an identity.
Mm.
You know, in the book, I talk about your gift is your real identity, because your gift is encapsulated in your purpose, right? And so you are created for a purpose to accomplish a certain impact in the world. That's your capacity that you have. That's your identity. Because if you will always feel misaligned, out of place, broken, unfulfilled, insignificant, if you are living a life that is outside of your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no way that you could, because we are created as human beings to desire to worship something that is greater than us and to accomplish something that is greater than us. Creativity is the act of always bringing into being the essence of who we are, right? So when I have an idea, it was formulated in my head, and I create that thing, it reflects me as a person of who I am. I, as a divine creation, when I am doing that, I'm always in reflection of who created me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So God designed me to create as he creates, because in my creating, I am reflecting him as a creator, right? That's the purpose. That's the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
When we're out of that cycle, when we're not creating out of who we really are, we're out of integrity with what we were designed to be. If you're out of integrity with who you are, everything that comes out of that is always going to feel off, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to feel, this doesn't really, it's just not working. And so that low hum that kind of is running in the background of all of our brains at some point is the thing that is telling us you're out of integrity with who you're really meant to be. And so when we start to reframe or shift that framework of identity in terms of, it doesn't matter whether I'm an attorney or I am a sanitation worker, right? If I am in integrity with who I am, I bring my integrity or my identity to my work, to my job. It does not give that to me, right? And so a lot of people are searching for that, and they feel like I can only be myself when I have this thing that says this is who I am, instead of saying I am who I am, and I'm going to bring whoever I am to whatever I am doing wherever I am. And you know this when you see certain people that you know in different contexts, and you're saying that's the same guy. That's the guy I always remember. This guy I always knew, whether it's in the dorm or it's in the gym or it's in the boardroom. You can identify that person being in integrity with who they are, right? But that requires a certain comfort level in knowing who you are, in knowing why you are here, and knowing what it is that you're meant to fulfill through your gift, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Definitely, definitely. And you said something really powerful, this concept of, basically it's Romans 12. Romans 12 talks about being not conformed to the world. And so where we are often drawing our integrity and our identity from those situations. So if this job is giving me satisfaction, if they are paying me what I think I deserve, if they're treating me with respect, then my identity or my integrity is defined back by that. But God forbid that stops happening. Now there's another side of me that's exemplified. as opposed to me being secure about the identity and the integrity that God has placed inside of me that I am being true to, regardless of the scenario, right? But I think practically, like we are shaped by our environments. We're not always going to be treated as we should, and we're not always going to succeed to the level that we want to succeed. So this is why, unfortunately, like if you go to a board meeting, I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about church politics, and so a lot of people, they draw their integrity from their church, right, or their definition of being a person who has some influence, right? So they can't find the respect that they want in the job. They don't get the satisfaction necessarily they want from the home, but here in the church setting, they can lay down the law, they can be belligerent, they can do whatever it takes, right? And I guess the difficulty is being able to transfer that level of, I guess they have some satisfaction in that specific sphere. How is somebody able to transfer? There's literally an area of their life where they feel like they are not failing. They feel like they are walking in their purpose, whether legitimate or not. How does that person transfer or start to duplicate the same feeling they have in this one sphere that they're winning to these other spheres that they are not winning in?
Okay. I like how you did that, because you actually brought it back to the point that I wanted to make based on Romans 12. We often take that verse and say, be not transformed by the world. We take it in a spiritual versus secular context. But in reality, there is no difference in this way. When we were created, when God created Adam, he gave him dominion over the earth. Dominion means that he was supposed to define the world and not the other way around. Adam named the animals. God didn't say this is a hippopotamus, this is a giraffe, this is whatever, right? Everything that is in our world is been labeled by mankind, not by God. The only thing that God has defined was light, day and night, or so we call it time. He created time and he identified himself, right? So he gave Adam a name, he gave himself a name, and throughout time he has always defined his own names, how he shows up, and he gave us time. But our entire world, we have the ability to articulate whatever that is, right? Stars, moon, sun, animals, our own children, we give them names, right? And it is in naming things that we put our imprint on them and we say, this is what this is. Something does not exist until we give it a name or a title or a label, right? So it is through that very thing. And the only one that has the ability to do that is the one that has dominion over it. So when you say be ye not transformed by the world, in other words, how do you define your world? How do you define yourself, right? A lot of the reason why we struggle with feelings of brokenness, of frustration, wherever we are, is because we feel as if we lack the power to define our own reality. So we find spaces where we can try to impose that, whether it's in church or it's at our job or whatever the case may be. Maybe you've had a boss who's taking this thing way too seriously. Like, bro, you make $75,000 a year. What are you doing, right? But that's their identity, because that is the way they feel like they have the power, the capacity to impose their will. We all have a desire to impose our will on our environment. And we exist in one of two spaces. We either feel like we have that ability or we don't. We either feel hopeful or hopeless, powerful or powerless, And so the ability to impose your will, to be not transformed, but to transform your world is the key. Understanding that your identity is as a dominator, right? To have dominion, to be the one that can create that entity. And again, we're talking about the price of failure. What is the price of feeling hopeless your entire life, of feeling powerless in so many instances, in your job, in your relationships, with your finances? Every decision that you make, you feel like other people are actually making it for you. I have no choice. I got to pay this bill. I got to go to work. I got to go do, what is the difference between having to do everything in your life and getting to do whatever you want? To me, that's the distinction. And that is where we need to learn to lean into that understanding of who we really are. We're called to have dominion and power over our lives and over the world around us.
Mm. I've heard a lot of people, and you might have said it as well too, that shift between I have to do this, a story we tell in our minds, versus I
Right.
get to do this. So I have to take my kids to this particular function versus I get to take my kids to the soccer game. I have to attend this particular meeting. I get to attend this particular meeting. Is it really as simple as that though? Right? I think a lot of times as believers, we can throw out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to positive thinking, when it comes to affirmations, when it comes to speaking over ourselves, because some of those concepts have been hijacked by the world. Talk to me about mental shifts like that and others that can start to get to this place of mind that you just talked about, where someone feels like it is a privilege to engage in activities. And when I'm thinking of it that way, it helps me get to a place of satisfaction and purpose. How practical is that, though?
Oh, so it's extremely practical, but it exists on a more qualitative level, I think.
Hmm.
I'm trying not to use all the big words here, but think about the things that you get to do in your life, right?
Hmm.
And how you frame that. I get to go on vacation, right? Nobody ever says I have to go on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the difference between the obligation and opportunity is everything. I have the opportunity to go and do this thing that I've always wanted to do. Nobody ever says I have to go and do this thing I always wanted to do, right? But even using that word changes the tenor of that thing, right? Let's say that you have a quote unquote bucket list, right? Um, and there's things that you want to check off. I can't wait till I can go to Paris, or I can't wait till I can jump out of a plane and go high diving, right? I'm skydiving. Changing the word from I get to go skydiving to the frame I have to go skydiving. I have to knock these things off my list or else my life is a failure. Or I
Mm-hmm.
get to do all these things because I want my life to be full and full of passion. It's a very different framework. And so the Bible tells us, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how the Bible phrases that, though, because it's two different parts of your body. As a man thinketh in his heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that we feel about the way that we think about things changes who we actually are.
Hmm.
So, and again, going back to having dominion, we have the ability, the capacity to change our world by describing it. And so when we can describe something differently, it actually becomes a different thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of, I made a post literally today talking about, we have turned guru, woke, elite into bad words, right?
Yeah.
It used to be a great thing. I want to go to an elite school.
Mm-hmm.
Now people talk about elites in political terms and saying, oh, the elites, these people who think they're above us, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if there's only above and below, but even still, what doesn't want to be elite? If you're an elite athlete, that separates you from every other athlete, right?
Right.
People woke, use the term woke. Well, now you woke, you're just so woke, like you think you're better than us. And what it really
Mm-hmm.
is, that is comparisоnism. What we're doing is trying to tear down these people that feel like they put themselves above us,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the reason that we feel like they feel like they're above us is because we actually feel like they make us feel beneath them. It's
Mm-hmm.
a frame of reference. When in
Mm-hmm.
reality, they have a different frame of reference. I can learn things from everyone. I don't have to agree with everyone. But even if I don't agree with you, I don't have to tear you down because I don't need to tear you down if we're on the same level. We just have
Mm-hmm.
different perspectives. And seeing things in terms of levels is one of the things that really robs us of the ability to be at our peak performance in our own life, to be able to create the most powerful experiences for ourselves. In terms of our faith, it robs us of the ability to be able to live a life more abundantly because we're constricting the things that we can enjoy to only the things that we get to do in this small space. Because
Mm-hmm.
most of your life is determined by obligations, right? You got to pay the bills, got to make sure there's food on the table, got to go to work, got to keep my wife or my husband happy, got to make sure the kids go to school. All these things, which if we really step back and said, I get to define what this is going to be. I get to
Mm-hmm.
define what this experience is going to mean. And so when we can lean into that, it changes the perspective of how we live our lives from day to day. And the last thing I'll say on this is just about gratitude, right? um, there's an old gospel song, "Be Grateful," right? Um, Actually, I'll tell you a story about how I kind of unpacked the power of gratitude and why this actually ties into our ability to succeed on a psychological level. So I went to a Tony Robbins event, and I had a religious experience at a Tony Robbins event. Believe it or not, um, I heard he was coming into town. I'd been hearing it for a while, and as I heard the commercials, I might have saw the ads on Facebook or whatever the case may be. I wasn't thinking much of it. I'm not going to Tony Robbins, whatever. But the event had multiple speakers. I think it was like Damon John and some other very successful people that were going to be there. And I realized, so they had tickets that were as low as $19. And I said, well, like the day before, I just decided I'm going to go. And at the time, things were really, really tough in my business, my personal life. Family was struggling financially, etc. And I've been truly trying to figure things out. I was kind of in a fog. This might have been around the time I was writing the book. I actually don't remember, but I went to the event. I get there, and there's all these different speakers. It's pretty good. It's a long day though. And so Tony comes up in the afternoon, maybe around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's talking and he's talking. And he's there. He's on stage for probably about 2 or 3 hours. Takes a break, and he's going through all these different exercises and things like that. Things he does, and every 20, 30 minutes, they pump up the music, and it's like a DJ. He's like, he's getting up and everybody's clapping their hands. And he wants you to get you into this state, right? We were excited. And it's cool. I'm like, but, I'm like, all right, whatever. So he gives us an example where we're supposed to, this exercise where we're supposed to walk around and meet people, and we are supposed to portray these different emotions as we are meeting people. So we walk up to a person as if we are don't really care about meeting them. We walk up to them as if we're dismissive. We walk up to them as if we're excited to meet them, etc. Right? We're going through this whole process, and then he in the middle of it, he stops and he says, "There's a guy on the front row." He had called him up before earlier. The guy came with his boss or whatever. He said, "Man, you're sitting up here in the front row and you're not participating. You're not involved in this process." Now, mind you, the tickets go from like $1,500 in the very front to $19 in the back. I'm in the back, in the very back, right? This guy is in the very front row, and he has the opportunity to experience this at the closest level. He can reach out and touch Tony. Actually, Tony had brought him up on stage, so we had a chance to actually talk to him one-on-one. And he's telling the guy, "Dude, you are not participating. You're not going all in on this. Why are you not?" Right? I'm in the back row, and I hear this guy say this to them. I'm like, I'm here. I'm here. Why don't I just play all out and just get what I came here for? It doesn't matter how much I paid for the ticket. We're both in the same room with the opportunity to get the same experience. The only difference is the proximity physically between us, myself, and Tony. Mm-hmm. But I have the same ability. The difference is that it's within me, right? So he gives us another activity, and he says, "All right, now this is what I want you to do." This is the part that I skipped. So prior to him stopping that guy, he had given us an exercise where he told us, now when the music goes, I want you to jump up and celebrate like you just won the Super Bowl, whatever the case may be, and celebrate. So the first time he gave us an exercise, I was like, woo, yeah, all right, let's go, did it. And so he stopped the music and he told the guy what he told him about, "You're not participating, you're not going all out." And that's when it clicked for me. And what happened was he said, "I'm going to do it again. I'm going to turn the music on. This time I want you to celebrate as if you won the Super Bowl, the biggest game of your life." They turned on the music and I went berserk. I was hollering and jumping. I'm in a suit and I'm just running and bouncing up and down the aisles. Whoa, yeah, whoa, right? And so it's like, it goes on for like a minute and a half, and I'm just celebrating and celebrating and celebrating. And then the music cuts off. And he says, "You feel that?" And the thing about it was, I did. My head was pounding. I could hear my heart pounding in my head. I was breathing heavy, but I was exhilarated. And he said, he had told us to imagine accomplishing the thing that we most wanted to accomplish. Mind you, I didn't even have in my head what I wanted to do. I didn't know. But I said, I'm going to celebrate anyway. And what I learned from that experience was a couple of things. One, we have the capacity to create the experience that we want to have in our lives simply by deciding to give into that, to say, I'm going to do it. The other part of it was I learned this is what gratitude really is. Gratitude, true gratitude, is explosive joy. Very few of it. What does God say? I came to give you life and life more abundantly. He came to give us joy. To realize the connection between the feeling of having abundance and the actual abundance that is existing in the universe. God says, I am life and life more abundantly, right? I am the way, the truth, and the life. Everything you need. If you want to know the way, I'm the way. If you need to know the truth and in search of the truth, I am the truth. If you want to know the light and the life, I am the life. He gives all of that to us. It's freely available to us. But we don't tap into it because we don't understand that we can create that experience simply by being open to accepting it and leaning into it fully embracing it. Full gratitude is explosive joy. It is unconditional surrender to the power of abundance that God gives us in our lives.
So Paul says, in all things, give thanks. And I love this concept of gratitude that you're giving us. Paul also talks about the state of being content. And I find that there is this fine line for believers between being content and grateful. Hey, at least I could be dead right now, right? I could be homeless right now. I got food on the table. There's a level of contentment that starts to grow closer to complacency. And kind of define the difference between me as a believer. I'm thankful. I know where I could be, right? And so I'm vocal about my praise to God for what he's brought me through, what he's provided for me, even though I'm not on this particular plane. How does that contentment start to inch into complacency, where we are literally, God is calling us to more, but we're still in this state of contentment. And we're not actually reaching the potential that he has for us because we're saying, well, at least I'm not looking backwards, looking negatively to me, living under a bridge versus God's called me to more. How does somebody bridge the gap between that pseudo contentment and getting past the complacency and past the failure of achieving that success that God has provided for us to actually getting to that place?
So complacency is a condition of stagnancy, of being stagnant. Contentment is our ability to process being in the process of being successful. What is that? That means that if I'm an athlete, my goal is to win the championship. But even in the off season, I embrace the process of working out and conditioning myself so that at the end of the season, I am in full condition to be able to accomplish the things I want to accomplish, right? Complacency says, I'm never going to win a championship anyway. Or complacency says, I already won a championship, so I'm good, right? And so the moment you accept the status quo is the moment you begin to decay, decline, or die in the midst of who you are, right? In the midst of what you're supposed to accomplish. And what does the Bible say? I will spew you out of my mouth because you're lukewarm. Lukewarmness is complacency. There's nothing more disgusting than a person with all the talent in the world, all the ability, or all the opportunities in the world who simply says, I don't care, right? Whatever, right? There's nothing that turns us off more because you're looking at them and you're saying, this is unrealized potential. The thing about it is we are all unrealized potential, right? We would look at a child who is 6 years old but has never learned to walk and says, I just don't feel like it. I'm good. You're feeding me here. I got life. I'm good. You don't carry me around, whatever. And in some ways, that's kind of what we as Christians do. We kind of we can fall asleep at the wheel. We can be content with being broke or being mediocre or having quote unquote enough. Contentment is not about how much you have. Contentment is about understanding I am doing the most with what I can do
Hmm.
as I've been called to do it, right?
Hmm.
And so many of the reasons that we fail is because we don't understand the difference between the two, right? A lot of that goes back to identity and who we think we are. And sometimes when we create a new identity around our contentment, we'll say, the things that I've done or the things that I wanted to do or wherever I am, this is who I am. And I'm good with that. Versus saying, I am the type of person who is always growing and developing and accomplishing more and pushing towards a goal. We actually, our brains are actually wired to do that. We release dopamine in the act of the idea of pursuing a goal or a dream. So just having that goal or that dream releases dopamine inside you to activate you to do that, right? So we actually have to suppress our dopamine, suppress those chemical reactions to achieving things.
Hmm.
When we sit around and say we're going to be content with what we are, we're going to become
Hmm.
complacent, right?
Wow.
We're actually, it's funny, we're actually doping ourselves
Hmm.
with contentment into complacency, if that makes sense.
Wow. That is scary. That's scary. And that kind of transitions. I have a couple of good questions that came in here. Take a look at these. Can I have gratitude if I don't live in my purpose? And then more specifically, can I live in my purpose being in a space, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a business that I don't like, or if I failed? What do you think about these questions here?
So these are three questions. Let me try to take
Yeah.
those one at a time. Can I
Yeah.
have gratitude if I don't live on my purpose? You can always have gratitude because gratitude is created, is generated. If you don't live in your purpose, it will be more challenging to find that gratitude. Because if gratitude is self generated, you understand your purpose is actually the primary reason for your gratitude. Being grateful for your gift, being grateful for your purpose colors or labels everything around you in your world around you because it now you start to realize, oh, this is simply helping me to fulfill my purpose. Even the adversity that we face, right? Whether it's in a job or a relationship or some other aspect of life that is coming up against us, we can be grateful for it because we can see it in the context of, oh, this helps me to sharpen my purpose. This helps me to sharpen my gift. It gives me another opportunity to show up in my gift in the way that I'm supposed to. You don't always have to be clear about why things are happening. You just know that there is a deeper purpose to it
Hmm.
and that your purpose that plays into it matters. And a lot of times, the reason why we are not grateful or not in gratitude is because we are searching for the meaning instead of creating the meaning. Gratitude gives us the ownership, it gives us our dominion back because we can say, no matter what happened, I'm grateful for it. I'll give you an example. Um, Over the Thanksgiving holiday, we were driving up to Maryland to visit our family. And so, 4 in the morning, um, my wife is driving. I'm dozing off to sleep. The kids are in the back. And all of a sudden, I hear her say, no, no, no. And I open up my eyes, and a deer flashes in front of us. And we hit the deer, right? Now, we were okay. We actually kept driving or whatever, but we pulled over the side of the road, look out, and finally get out at a gas station. And the front of the car is wrecked. Of course, it's a deer. But if you know anything about people when they hit deer, usually it can total your entire car,
Yeah.
right? So we tried to find a rental car. It's Thanksgiving holiday, so all the rental cars in the whole area are gone. There's a whole process that happened. We eventually had a friend that loaned us a car. We were able to get to Thanksgiving, able to have a good time with the family, etc. I remember talking to my father like the week after that or whatever, and so the truck had to be put in the shop up in Maryland. We were without it for 6 weeks, so all the way through Christmas, everything. Couldn't do all those fun Christmas things like go see the Christmas lights with the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Didn't get the car back till January. I remember talking to my father, and he asked me, how we were doing, whatever. And I told him, said, I'm grateful that it happened.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of other things to be grateful for, that we could find things to be grateful for in spite of what had happened. But I decided that I was going to be grateful that it had happened.
Hmm.
Now, even then at the time, I wasn't really sure, but I felt like there was a shift in that. And the shift was this: when you are trying to find the good out of the bad, you are saying that the situation is bad and I'm plucking it out.
Mm-hmm.
When you decide to be grateful for the entire thing, the situation that happened, regardless of how you may have felt about it, it gives you ownership over that situation, right? You have dominion over that. I'm grateful that it happened because I know that it happened for my good. I don't know how it happened, how it's going to turn out for my good just yet, but I know that it is in my favor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the differences between failure and success, is the ownership that we take over the things that happen to us. And gratitude gives us that power to be able to take ownership over it, to have responsibility in this moment. My responsibility is to be grateful, to be in gratitude, no matter what. Because anytime I give into anger, resentment, fear, regret, whatever the case may be, anxiety around these different situations, I am surrendering my power, my God-given power, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually making God powerless in the situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm mad because God didn't do the thing I felt like he could do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm focusing on that aspect of it instead of saying, no, God has control over all of this. He knows what's best. I'm just going to rely on him. And I'm going to be grateful for the fact that his hand is still imprinted on my life, right? And that's a very different shift from being grateful in spite of to being
Mm-hmm.
grateful because, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. So I guess maybe that answers her second and third question too. Can I live in my purpose working a job I don't like? You can,
Mm-hmm.
because your purpose is not your job,
Right.
right? You bring your purpose to your job no matter where it is. And I challenge people to do this, because if you can bring your purpose to your job, you can find more enjoyment in it, even though it may not be ideal where you want to be at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the more space we create to be fully ourselves, wherever we are, the more space we create to be wherever we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
whenever we want to be, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah, yeah. I would actually take that a step further, in that when you live in your purpose in a place that you don't want to be, you will actually have, in my case, I've seen this happen in people that I've mentored. They've actually had the courage to eventually leave that comfort space because they're bringing that purpose. That's how I ended up being full-time entrepreneur. I was at a job, right? And I brought my purpose. I had a desire to own my own business, to have cogs, to have a team. It didn't necessarily align with me as an employee. And I actually prayed about it, right? I prayed about it. I was ready to go and talk to the president and tell him I was leaving. And God was like, no, I want you to wait, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I brought my purpose to that job. I actually transformed that place because of my purpose, right? And so that when I was ready to leave, they became my biggest client because they saw how much value I brought, versus before that, maybe punching a clock. Like, am I really going to miss an employee that's punching the clock? That's all they're doing, right? So if you bring your purpose, I've seen when you bring your purpose to a job and you're living that thing out, you will get to a place where you will outgrow that job and you have the courage, as opposed to, man, I'm going to miss these guaranteed checks. Like, no, this place no longer can house and cage in my purpose. So definitely love that. Yeah, she says my purpose is not something I do, right? You would agree with that, right?
100%. And I will take the fact that you said your purpose, right? So the Bible tells us that a man's gift make room for him. A man or a woman's gift makes room for them, right? The gift, the reason why it makes room for you is because that is your value. The origin of that text talks about tradition, that when you wanted to have an audience with royalty, what you would do is you would send ahead a gift of great value.
Mm-hmm.
And that gift would assure your place or your audience before the king or the queen.
Mm-hmm.
And so what our gift does when we bring our gift or walking in our purpose, we are securing our place wherever we go because we bring that value to whatever context. Again, dominion, right? We are choosing to transform our environment instead of be transformed by it. because the more value you bring to something, when you bring value or advantage to a place or a situation, it becomes more valuable because of what you brought to it, right? So now your value becomes obvious and you become more confident because you know that I can do this in a place that I hate. What would I do in a place that I love?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it means that I have the ability to define where I am. I have the ability to define my environment, not be defined by my environment, my title, my job, even my feelings about a thing, because feelings are just signals of thoughts. And so when you hate a job or you have feelings of hatred or dislike or frustration, it's really because you're thinking certain things. I wish I was somewhere else. I wish I was making more money. I wish I was doing this. And you feel what? Powerless to change that. So instead of accepting that feeling of powerlessness, identify it for what it is and realize, oh, I can change this. First thing I can do is I can change the way I think about this situation. The next thing that we'll do is change how I feel about this situation. And then the next thing that will happen is now how I show up to this situation will change, which means that now I am free to bring my value, to bring my gift, to live in my purpose wherever I am. I bring more value to it. Therefore, I am more valuable. Now I know, well, if I can bring the value that I hate, value to a place that I hate, I can get to a place that I love. If I can create a place that I love out of a place that I hate, then I can create a place that I love wherever I want. And we all have that capacity to do that. The thing is, most of us have not been taught how to create that capacity, out of that capacity that we are already given by our Creator.
I want to set you up. I know you have an event coming tomorrow. The cost of inaction is something you talk about a lot. And I think about an example in the Bible. It's in Second Chronicles chapter 33. I know I didn't discuss this with you before, and it came to my mind as you were talking. It's a story of Manasseh, the king Manasseh. He's the son of Hezekiah, somebody who should not have been born, right? Because Hezekiah prayed and pleaded when the God was trying to take his life, gave him 15 more years. In year 3, this son is born. He reigns 55 years. He's the most wicked king that Judah ever had, right? He's passing his sons to the fire. He's doing sorcery and witchcraft, and God is trying to get a message to him. So if you read that account in Second Chronicles 33, I think Second Kings 21 as well, you see that he was failing, right? And he was not learning from his failures. And God is trying to literally send him prophets, and he's sending marauders and through specifically because of the evil. Now, it's an encouraging story because at the end of his life, after he is taken into captivity, I think they gouge his eyes out, like he has some tragedy, and he eventually repents, right? But what was the cost of his inaction? So later on, we see that Judah was carted into captivity, into Babylon, because of the sins of Manasseh. It's specifically, I think it's chapter 24 of Second Kings, specifically because of his sins. So even though he finally got it, he finally learned from the same failure that he was failing over and over and over again, there was a cost of the inaction of pursuing a route that could give him to the point of success that God was trying to get him to. Talk briefly about what you have going on tomorrow and your passion for getting people past the cost of inaction. So where these shifts that you have been teasing now don't take place a year from now, 10 years from now, you're trying to encourage people to do it now. What does that look like to you? What you got going on this week?
Yeah, so we have the Crush Your Goals Challenge, which starts tomorrow. And in it, we are walking through people through what it takes to be able to crush their goals, obviously. Part of that is understanding why we fail the way that we do. Failure in terms of not acting, failure in terms of not being successful at the actions that we take. And then what are the frameworks that we can use to be able to create more successful, powerful lives and businesses? One of the challenges that we face, it's a great story. You talked about King Manasseh, right? One of the challenges that we face, though, is that time exists on two planes. One is on a linear plane in terms of the calendar, right? Day to day. The other one is how it exists in our heads. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. When we're in a routine or whatever, we can fool ourselves into believing that we have more time than we do. I mean, a post today said, if you live to be 70 years old, you have 25,550 days, right? I'm 47 years old. I realize that I'm already at 17,000 days. which means that I would have less than 8,000 days left if I live to 70. We know because of COVID, you may not have that long. You know, because, even though we're living and people living longer and healthier lives, maybe I live to 80. Maybe I get up to 30,000 days or whatever the case may be. Maybe. But right now, the actuality is that all of those days, every day of that 25,550 days is an illusion. The only day that you have is today. So the idea that I can wait 10 years is arrogant. The idea that I can put it off till next year after I do this thing is arrogant, right?
Wow.
How arrogant of it me to believe that I'm going to wait. I have all this time to wait until I decide to deploy my purpose, to wait until I'm going to build this thing that I can leave, this legacy that I can leave my children, to wait until I can impact other people. Yeah, it's in me, but those people can wait until I'm more comfortable with it, until I'm more happy with where I am, until I do this other thing, whatever. And so the fact is that we don't have that time. The other thing is that every day that you choose to wait, you lose exponentially on what you're able to create day by day, right? Because what we build today, tomorrow we build upon that.
Yeah.
Right. So you think that, oh, I tried this and I failed. I tried this and I failed. You think about somebody like Thomas Edison, who tried 9,999 times. The 10,000th time was the time when the light bulb was created. Can you imagine what his wife might have been saying to him after the 90th time?
Yeah.
Tommy, when are you going to stop? When are you going to get a real job? Tommy, when are you going to do something that really makes 90 times, 900 times, 9,000 times? He failed 9,999 times. And so we look at that as failure, but then he is known as the inventor of the light bulb, which means that he succeeded, which means that it took him 10,000 experiments to get it right. He had to learn. Every failure, if we will, was compounded into the success, right? And so now there's all kinds of light bulbs, and now you're able to build on that. So our success is a compounding of our failures. But the longer we wait to engage, to learn, to grow, the more we compound our failures as well. We're failing to learn. We're failing to build and move forward. And you say time is money. So every day that you fail to make as much money as you can, every day you fail to learn how to make more revenue in your business, every day you fail to learn to make more impact in your business, is a day you never get back. Is a compounding effect you can never kick into action because you failed to start. And so many of us have gotten in our heads and think we have more time than we do. We fool ourselves in thinking that, well, I'll just do it tomorrow. And yes, the Bible tells us that, he can restore what the locust stole. But at the same time, you can't do that if you never start planting that seed, if you never start planting that harvest, right? If you never start taking action and initiative to do the things that you were created to do. So the Crush Your Goals challenge is your opportunity to lean into that, to be able to more powerfully understand the process of success, how you can be exponentially more successful. And if you're an entrepreneur who has a team, employees, whatever the case may be, how you can help them to be able to impact that as well. Because without it, we're all just spinning our wheels. And eventually, like I said, those wheels wear out. You start spinning slowly and slower and slower. And if you're treading water, what happens when you stop treading water? You sink. So, yeah.
I love that. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have not had the experience of working directly with a guy like Fred Bussey, this is a real treat. It's 5 days. Fred's one of my coaches. He's a community in our men's accountability group. He's someone who pours into us, and just drinking from his wisdom, from his experience, from his knowledge, it is life-changing. So the link is in the chat. 5 days, 1 hour a day, unless you go to VIP, which we definitely recommend you do that. But thank you so much, Fred. Anything that you want to leave with those who may be tuning in now Just one nugget that they can walk away with.
I think that when you're really understanding that the only way you can really fail is if you choose not to act in your purpose. So when you're chasing your purpose instead of looking inside and understanding, what did God put inside me? And why did he put it here? And then how do I implement that into my business, into my life, into my ministry, whatever the case may be, every single day? If you're not doing that, you are choosing to fail. You are choosing to live your life in failure. I'm not saying you are a failure, because the fact is your gift is your identity. You're just choosing not to embrace that identity. So you are not becoming a failure, but you are living in failure instead of living in purpose. And we all have the capacity to choose. That is our greatest weapon. That is our greatest God-given right, the ability to choose to define the life that we want for ourselves and those around us. The ability to lean into that purpose and that impact. And we can choose that for ourselves. As a wise man once said, choose wisely. Choose wisely.
Amen. I love that. You see, I snuck an extra few minutes here. I didn't want the conversation to end, but thank you so much for taking this time with us. Can you close us out with prayer, please?
Sure. Let's bow our heads. Father God, it is an honor and privilege to be able to speak with my brother Darian and all those who have taken the time to listen with us. Lord, you have created us with a purpose innate inside of us, and the world tries to obscure that, tries to distract us from it, tries to help us to forget who and what we are and why we are here. But in you, Lord, there is the ability, the capacity to be able to live out that purpose, to discover a deeper relationship with you, a more fulfilling relationship with you, ourselves, and those around us, because we know that you have given us the capacity to define it, to transform it to your honor and glory. So I ask that every person that is here listening, every person that will listen on the replay, every person that will engage with either Darian or myself or anyone who has been a part of this conversation will be impacted by it exponentially in a powerful way. That the things that you have set aside for us will be for us, that we will embrace them and be able to pass them on in a way that is meaningful and powerful to all those who will come to know you for who and what you truly are. We thank you, Lord, for your love, for your mercy, your grace, and for your Holy Spirit. Abide with us and help us to be accepting and ready for your salvation and your soon coming. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all for watching and for listening. Definitely sign up for the challenge, and we will see you all next week by God's grace. Take care.